Vorrei dare il benvenuto a tutti che sono venuti e prima di andare in avanti vorremmo sapere se can I speak in English?
Yes.
Or is it better in Italian? English. Okay, thank you so much. I would have made the effort, but today we find ourselves here in the hall of the UISG just 4 months after the meeting that they had with the press at the conclusion of the Synod of Bishops on Young People, the Faith and Vocational Discernment. And today we're here again after 10 Superiors General representing women religious throughout the world participated in a meeting on the protection of minors in the church. And today we have with us 6 representatives, and I will give you their names so that you can, from left to right, we have Sister Monica Joseph. We have Sister Veronica Obenibo, Sister Maria Teresa Horneman, we have Sister Carmen Samut, we have Sister Pat Marie, and we have Sister Aurora Torres here with us today. And although only 4 months have passed since the Synod, it seems like it's been a much longer time in terms of the presence of the UISG at such a high-level meeting in the Vatican and how that's changed. So Sister Carmen is going to tell us a little bit about that.
This time for a big meeting at the Vatican, it's the whole board of the UISG who was invited. So the 10 of us could attend. This is surely because of the topic, but also we'd like to think that this is how things will be in the future. Because up to now, in the last 2 synods, we had first of all to ask to have some places, and we were only given 3 places, and we were given the conditions of how to fill them up, not necessarily from the board. So we hope that this is an example of what will happen in the future, that we will have more say, more places in synods and other big meetings at the Vatican. We also were very happy to have Sister Veronica be one of the speakers, and she gave a 30-minute talk like all the other speakers. We are very proud of her.
In speaking with the sisters, one of the areas in which all of them were extremely touched were the testimonies, and we can now hear from them about how they were touched by those.
I was deeply moved when I heard the testimonies by women and by men. And all I can say was I was left speechless, and it broke my heart.
I was touched by the testimonies, but much more by the last speaker, who was a woman. I felt we all experienced a trauma in that room, listening to her. And at the end, I think many of us were converted.
For me, it was, of course, not the first time to listen to victims, but in this context, it was very touching, and I felt it helped us to, with discussions and theory to come down to the experience, to the level of experiences. And I was very happy that this was included in the program, regular, to listen to victims.
I can tell you that most of the time I had tears in my eyes, and that I felt really moved by the fact that the victim was victimized many times, not only by being sexually abused, which is already very horrible, but also by not being listened to, by not being believed, by having to speak out and not know if the other person is going to react by compassion.
I too was greatly moved by the words of all the victims. In fact, I still carry the pain inside me. When you listen to the pain that they've suffered in their bodies, in their psychic, in their spiritual sense, you feel that as a church we're called to listen deeply and to walk with those who are deeply wounded. And it's not a short journey, it will be a long journey. It's not a once-off listening, it's an accompaniment that will go on for many years. But I think it calls on us to really assume a listening space in the church for those who have been deeply hurt by the church and in the church.
Yo hablo español. Para mí, escuchar el testimonio de las víctimas en este contexto ha sido un momento de gracia dolorosa, pero muy importante. He escuchado otros testimonios, mi carisma es la reparación, en otros contextos, pero escucharlos en este contexto creo que ha sido fundamental para quienes nunca habían escuchado este tipo de consecuencias de los abusos. Y creo que esto ha permitido abrirse a la escucha, abrirnos todos a la escucha. Ha sido fundamental empezar con ellos, tenerlos durante muchos momentos, que creo que ha tocado los corazones y nos compromete cada vez más. Agradezco mucho a las personas que han podido hablar ante un auditorio como el que estaba ahí.
As we know, the UISG has a great reach in the world, representing so many congregations of men and women religious. So I'm sure all of us would like to know, regarding the content that was provided at the meeting, how that was heard and received by the 10 representatives. So Sister Pat Murray will address us on that.
Obviously, the themes of the responsibility of bishops, their accountability, and the whole question of transparency are three incredibly important themes. But as we listened, and the texts that were presented to us, that you've all received, were quite dense. They were theological, spiritually founded, but also with many practical applications. And certainly as UISG, we will be making all those texts available worldwide in the different languages, and calling on the leaders of congregations to share these materials with their members, with their sisters. We would also work with the Union of Superiors General to really apply these themes to ourselves, because the theme of responsibility of accountability and transparency applies to everybody who has responsibility of any kind for young people. And the whole question of what we put in place, various mechanisms, following guidelines, ensuring that never again will this happen because of our lack of action or of our blindness. So I think we know we have an enormous responsibility in this area, and we've already begun the journey. We've already had several workshops here in Rome, focusing on the protection of minors, but we will equally, and have begun to have webinars and other events. But this is a pathway that we will take resolutely to implore on every leader, or every women's congregation, to take the necessary steps that are needed so that we protect and nourish and safeguard our children.
And of course, the UISG made a particular contribution in the fact that Sister Veronica was able to address the Assembly for 30 minutes, probably the longest Woman Religious has addressed such a high-level meeting in the Vatican. So right now we'd like to hear from her and her experience.
Thank you. My topic was on openness, and I focused on our call to openness as a church by speaking the truth and listening to those who are victims. I also talked about transparency, publishing, what the church had done in the past and what the church is hoping to do, and a strategic way forward. I felt, though, that in the hall, that there were people, bishops, cardinals, who did not believe in some of the things I was saying. I also felt among some, I would say, African bishops, some who felt that there were more important issues in Africa than what I mentioned. I focused more on the sexual abuse of priests and religious rather than on other issues. The other issues being the fishing villages in some parts of the continent that women, children are abused. They are taken there when they are like 10, 12, and they stay there sometimes forever. There is the apprenticeship in many parts where 10-year-old, 12-year-old are put and they work from morning till night, no payment, nothing. And feeding very little, even Saturday, Sunday, they are not free. I noticed too that there are in some areas where children are given to the priests because their ancestors or their family members have committed offenses. Usually they are women, they may be 9, 10, 15, and they stay there. They have children for the priests, but nobody claims the children. Trafficking, I think the Pope mentioned the tourist sex trade, which involves a lot of children, and also, of course, trafficking, where children are trafficked. But I focused more on the sexual abuse of children by priests and religious. But some people were not happy. But we need to look at that because the other issues are not very much about us as priests and religious. But this one of the sexual abuse of minors, we have to look at it seriously. So I felt some people were not too happy. Even the child soldiers is also an issue on the African continent. Incest is another area. But for me, the greatest work now is to give hope. Hope to the victims and hope to our children for tomorrow. Because if we don't do anything now, it might be too late. Because the credibility of the church is at stake. Thank you.
There was a lot of other things happening behind the scenes. There were things happening over coffee. There were the groups in which you all met and which conversations took place off the record, we might say. Would any of you like to share with us your impressions about that aspect of the meeting? The group work, meeting over coffee, meeting in the hall, conversations that you overheard, etc. What were your impressions about that aspect, where people are less likely to monitor what they're saying?
I was happy that we worked in groups. It was a good opportunity to listen and to share. I felt in the group we journeyed. There was a process that happened to greater openness, greater responsibility, greater consensus. However, I would just like to say I wish there were more women. I was the only woman in my group among the other men. So I wish there were more women, lay as well as religious. But it was a fruitful experience.
We were two in the group, Carmen and myself. But still, when I entered the room first, I said, oh, how will this be? But a few women and boys, bishops, cardinals, and we talk about this topic. And the first day, I didn't say anything because I had the feeling I don't know where we are. I don't have the feeling, and there were very different opinions regarding this topic, you could sense. But then I also had the feeling that we journeyed, as Monica said, as a group, and we were able to express our opinions, and I was also able to bring in what I wanted to say. Never in my life I have been with so many bishops together. But the most positive for me was that there was a journey, that people who were in the beginning giving the signal, like saying this is not our main problem or this is not so important, up to that point to say that it's not really happening. I don't know what contributed, surely the personal witnesses of the victims, but also our sharing. And I also felt that I was listened to.
So we were 18 in the group, and there were bishops from bishops' conferences, which holds hundreds of bishops, and then some bishops who are all alone. They don't even have a conference. So the difference between the realities that these bishops or cardinals are living, it was extreme. And what I liked about the group was that because of that, some had a lot of material, they had a lot of experience, so they could speak to what the others were asking. And they were also learning from the others who were in very, very different situations. And for those who had more expert help and all this, they were ready to share with the others. So there was a lot of mutual help, which was already starting in the group, but which they were giving themselves the task of looking at how they could cooperate together. So I am very hopeful from the group work that things are going to move on, concrete things. They were really concretely saying, well, if we send somebody from our diocese to study here in the Gregorian for child protection, they could help out with the different dioceses, also from another country. So that sharing for me was very important.
For me too, the experience was the experience of being in a learning group. I mean, I would have to say I was very impressed by the willingness to learn and by the willingness to move. I mean, like others have said at the beginning, there was a certain resistance among some saying, this is not a problem in my part of the world. However, by the end, those same participants were saying, I can't say this is not a problem in my part of the world. I don't know. It may emerge. The whole question of culture came up, and whether culture, there need to be different mechanisms according to different cultural contexts. Now that isn't to use culture as a way of hiding something, but saying in more collectivist cultures, in different, if you like, ethnic and tribal groups, there are their own ways, extensive ways of solving matters of grave and grievous importance. So there was some conversations about that, but mostly there was a sharing of resources, of pointing out where help can be got, both in terms of expert help, sharing their guidelines with one another, willingness to walk with each other. And as a woman, I was the only woman in the group. Yes, I wished there were more women. And I do believe there will be more women and lay women in such groups and in the future. But I felt listened to and respected, and because I come from Ireland, and we have had our own journey there, and there were several bishops in the group who were from countries who have had already a long journey of painful realization of this problem and taking steps to change the reality and to educate everybody. We all have a responsibility, but the leaders of the church obviously bear a particular responsibility. But I was listened to with respect and appreciation. It wasn't a toleration. It was a real a gratitude that there was the voice of women both in the conference but also in the working group.
Para mí la experiencia ha sido positiva y en el grupo éramos 17 personas, yo era la única mujer. La mayoría de los obispos era de América Central y América del Sur. Solo alguno de Mozambique, uno de Mozambique, de otros dos lugares que ahora no recuerdo bien. Esto ayudó mucho en el sentido de la preocupación que mostraban los obispos para poder tener los medios para dar respuesta, para hacer camino, crear comisiones y ver cómo poder detener y enfrentar esta situación del abuso de menores al interior de la iglesia. Siento que pude hablar cuando tenía que hablar. Hubo un momento después de la conferencia que dio la doctora Gabriela en el que ellos sintieron un poco como diciendo, nos llamaron la atención porque no escuchamos a las mujeres. Y después me decían, dinos algo. Y yo decía, pues yo he dicho lo que he tenido que decir cuando he visto necesario. Y esto, pero se fue creando un ambiente de mucha escucha, de querer ayudar, de caminar ya no solo en colegialidad, solo los obispos, las conferencias, sino también en sinodalidad, la vida religiosa, no solo la vida religiosa masculina, también la vida religiosa femenina y los laicos. Se habló mucho de la participación, de esto que no es solo dar participación a los laicos, sino que verdaderamente saber acoger la riqueza de la profesionalidad que pueden ofrecernos en este desafío tan grande.
In my group, we were two women, Sister Sally, who is not here today because she's traveled, and myself. We felt listened to. We were respected for the views we had and for the experiences we shared. In fact, when I entered group after the presentation. I was told I was the third cardinal in the group. Because we had two cardinals in our group who had made presentations. There were lots of discussions on culture and how we need to translate whatever we are doing in general to culture. But we also agree that cultures need to be evangelized too. There is also, especially in the African continent, one of the bishops kept stressing, not even an African bishop, but working in Africa, kept stressing that the role of the family is important. And I did agree with him that yes, the role of the family is important in culture, but also we have to remember the ethnic groups and how, if it is not my ethnic group, I may take a different decision from when it is my ethnic group. I felt that the cardinals and bishops in the group also were able to ask me questions about what I said. For example, that I said minor seminaries should be eliminated, and they listened. I explained what I meant, because minor seminaries, the children are too young to make decisions, and they all agreed with me that yes, maybe if they are older, 16, 18 is better than having minor seminaries. In fact, the joke was at the end that some bishops were going to some major superiors. Can I sell my minor seminary to you? Thank you.
I'm sure you all brought questions with you, so we will now open the floor. We have about a half hour. I'll start with John Allen. If you could please, for all of us, state your name, your media outlet, and then if you would like to direct your question to one of the participants.
Thank you. My name is John Allen, and I'm with Crux. This question is for Sister Veronica. First of all, Sister, I want to say that I love Nigeria. I think of myself as an honorary Nigerian. I was very proud of you when you gave your talk. I want to read a line to you that was in your speech, and then ask you what you meant by it. Okay. You said, by taking the necessary steps and maintaining zero tolerance with regard to sexual abuse, we will release the oppressed. What does zero tolerance mean to you? I ask because that phrase gets used all the time, and it seems that different people mean wildly different things by it. So for you, what does zero tolerance mean?
For me, zero tolerance means when repeat, please. Okay. Zero tolerance means when somebody is identified as an abuser, there needs to be some questions asked. We should not just sweep it under the carpet. That's the first thing, that investigation takes place. It doesn't mean that the offender or the so-called offender is guilty, but that we make investigation. For me, that's where zero tolerance begins. In some cases, people are removed from their ministry right away because we are afraid they may continue to perpetrate the action. By listening to the victim and doing something about it, I would say that's where the zero tolerance begins. And if people are found guilty, don't just move them to another diocese or to another parish or to a village parish, as it will happen with us, or to the monastery. Look into it. If it is not a grave offense, then find ways to help the person. Or if it is a grave offense, no, the person leaves the priesthood, because it is for me to offend, make our little ones into object of sexual abuse is a grave sin, and we shouldn't tolerate it. Thank you.
Can I follow up very quickly? Sister, you said it is a great offense the person should leave the priesthood. You don't just mean being removed from ministry, you mean being dismissed from the clerical state, or to use the word defraud.
Yes, if a child, I want to say this. I told the group I had a dream just that morning, and I was given a child in my dream, and I was given cold water. When I put my hand into the cold water, I said, this child, what will happen? And the child, of course, was nearly frozen, but it revived. And I slowly was washing the child, and in the end there was a stain on the side, and I kept slowly cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. For me, it's the image, and that image has stayed with me, that as a church, I don't mean just the bishops, I mean all of us, that we are, as we say in my language, our eyes, we shine our eyes so that we see what is happening around us, that we act, that we say something. And that for me, a child that is abused, the stain remains all through life. So why would that person who has abused a child or children continue to stay in the priesthood? I'm not saying we shouldn't help the person to be balanced, because that person could need a balance. But I'm saying the person cannot be in the priesthood and continue. That's what I mean.
And now we'll go to Josh McElwee and then Serenary Formaggio. Thank you.
Two brief questions. The one, I think it'll seem obvious, but to other people it won't be. You mentioned the importance of having 10 of you here instead of the 3 at the Synod. What benefit is it to you to have a bigger group? Why does it matter? Can you tease that out a bit? And the second, I think you might dodge this, but I want to ask. During the coffee breaks, was there any discussion any of you had with any bishop? Did they ask you about the study of women deacons? Did they give you any thoughts on that?
I'll just take the first one. Why was it important that there were 10 women religious then? The UISG represents almost 1,900 religious congregations. Probably, the members are probably between 600 and 700,000 women. I think as women religious too, we are very connected with our lay colleagues in all sorts of institutions, in schools and hospitals and clinics, in various pastoral initiatives. So excuse me, I think as women religious, we create networks. We connect with others, men and women. But I think we had an important role to play representing the women religious of the world, and also taking on the responsibility that we have for running so many institutions, projects and programs. So I think we, in our leadership role, needed to be acknowledged as part of the church. But I think we also saw ourselves speaking on behalf of women in general. We didn't just see ourselves speaking for the women religious of the world, but also for women in general. And I think as women, we also could, we feel this deeply in ourselves. I can say as a woman religious from Ireland, I carry in myself the shame that we as sisters from Ireland feel at what has happened in our church. And I felt for me personally, it was a journey of repentance these days. A journey of acknowledging any failures that we as individuals, but much more that we corporately have made in terms of the care and the protection and the loving accompaniment of children at any time.
I think also concretely, we were in 80 different groups, so we could bring our voice in those groups. While if we were only 3, we could at the best be in 3 groups. That's it. For the discussion, personally, nobody asked me anything about any other subject except what we were talking about, child abuse.
My question is Sister Veronica. In your speech during the meeting, you spoke very clearly against the culture of silence in the church about sex abuse. Now that the summit is over, do you see any concrete action going in that direction? Because I'm going to say something obvious. Many survivors, I would say most of them, are not satisfied with the outcome of the summit.
I do agree that it takes time to forgive and to heal. And that's where those who are, saying, no, this is not enough. But I do want to appeal that we should be people of hope, people of the resurrection. Let us not stay with the filth of where we are. Many countries have done the right thing. Canada, USA, Ireland, Austria, Germany. We have groups who have already done something in the right way. Many of us haven't. So let's, the whole church, start looking at this issue. And I believe that if we are people of hope, and there is accountability, because the fear for some of us is when the bishops go home, even though they have said we are committed to doing something, and we will, there will be at the parish level, at the diocesan level, at the subliminal level where they come to Rome, that reports will be given every year on the issue, that there is a follow-up. But not just for the bishops, it's for the whole church, because they talked about collegiality and synodality. So for me, I am hoping that even with Catholic Women Organization, Catholic Men Organization, Catholic Youth Organization, all those groups will be asked, what are they doing about not just the abuse of minors, but even the abuse among themselves or with other people, because we know and we see. Can we talk? Can we share? It's the responsibility of everybody, and all hands should be on deck. That's what I believe will happen.
Xavier Lenormand from the French press agency Media. You talk a lot about the case of sexual abuses done by men. I would like to know if during the summit the case of sexual abuses done by women and by religious sisters has been discussed as a specific topic, or has it just been forgotten or just been diluted in the cruel abuses case? Thank you.
In my group, we did just mention it in passing, that there are abuses in convents, especially in formation houses and in boarding schools by women religious. It was acknowledged. And many congregations have also done something about it in putting down safeguarding guidelines for each of their communities, each of their schools. Some have even published it on their website. So in fact, women have been doing a lot in this area, because as you know, we had cases in Ireland, I think in Australia, that women religious have taken this on for so many years. So I know in the small group, my small group, we we talked about it, and I think I did mention it in the large group, but I just mentioned it in passing. But there wasn't any focus on it, because the focus at this meeting was more on the clergy. Thank you.
Hi, Phil Pulella from Reuters. I have a question for Sister Veronica and the sister next to her, whose name I don't remember. Thank you. And then one just for Sister Veronica and everyone else. The first one is for everybody, but both of you mentioned that you got the feeling that the bishops thought they had better things to do, that they had the bigger problems, okay? Did anybody actually tell you this, or did you just get the feeling? In the coffee breaks or in the, did any of you actually, did anybody tell you that, you know, this is not as big as the other problems? And then I have a question for Sister Warren.
I said this because in our group there were some bishops, they were saying that's actually not in the beginning. It's not their main issue. They felt we should better talk about child soldiers and trafficking of children, and this what is surely also a problem. But then we could agree, we said, but this, of course, this is a trauma, it should not happen, but what we are talking in this conference is about what happens inside to the church, priests and religious. So I think we could agree to say that might be another topic, another time, but this time we are talking about the abuse through clerics and to more that we did not discuss actually about women religious. We discussed, and then later it did not come. I cannot remember that it came. So one or the other tried sometimes still to say, but we have bigger problems in our countries. It's not the biggest problem. But during the breaks and so I did not hear it. I was not addressed later.
Which leads me to my second question, because you, Sister Veronica, said specifically, and you just now, Sister Teresa, said that there are other problems, child soldiers, etc., the children that are being exploited in the fishing villages, etc., but that's not the problem of the church. But in his closing address, the Pope spent a lot of time talking about this as a global problem, and then said it's our problem. This is one of the things that disappointed the victims quite a bit. That do you think that maybe he should have flipped that around and started talking about the specific problem in the church rather than saying, oh, it happens everywhere, and then it happens also to us, and then addressing the church?
I'm not sure I got what you are trying to say.
Okay. In the Pope's finals, you said that you felt also that there are problems like child soldiers, and a lot of children are abused in other environments.
Yes.
Okay. And you said, but we're talking about a church issue. Yesterday, in the Pope's final address, the first few pages were about the problem elsewhere. As Zoltis is saying, almost kind of an excuse, saying, we're not the only ones who do this. And then when he got to the point about, we are the ones who do this, yes, it's terrible, etc., etc., do you think that that was the way to handle it? Because that is one of the things that the abuse victims really felt let down about, that they were just sort of lumped together with the rest of the world.
For me, as I said, I focused more on the church's issue. But the Pope's address at the end was to make it bigger, because I was saying too that it's the responsibility of all of us. Because I'll take, for example, the apprenticeship. It happens a lot in Nigeria and some African countries. People who are leaders in the church have sometimes their own nephews as apprentices. When it is getting close to when the person should be, we call it, be independent, they can rope the person with theft or something, and that's the end. that person gets nothing, goes without nothing. So for me, having all of us take the responsibility that even if I'm a lay person and I see it, I can say, or the group I belong to will say to me, Veronica, what you have done is not right. I hope you get what I'm saying. If the Pope says that, yes, it's wider, but coming to narrow it down, I feel it's to all of us to take responsibility. But then, as a church, as he said, we have to move forward. Yes, the past has been bad, ugly, scandalous, but what can we do to move forward? I think for me, the joint full responsibility, accountability that he's talking about at the end is what is important. Thank you.
Hello, Livia Borghese from CNN. Abused nuns. The topic was raised by our colleague at least. And are you going to speak out on this topic? Do you have any figures? Where are we going on this?
I think you have probably seen the statement that UISG issued in November, which called on sisters and others worldwide who have experienced abuse of any kind to speak, and that UISG, to break the silence, and that UISG was willing to accompany or receive reports from any sister who would do so. Obviously, any member of a religious congregation has resource to her own congregational leader, but equally has resource to the Vatican Congregation for Religious. So we were offering another channel. Do we have numbers? No, we don't have numbers. Does abuse of sisters exist? Yes, it exists. We do know that. But there is almost no, if you like, traceable, there are verbal accounts. And UISG has tried to say that in order to proceed in a proper way, that official complaints need to be made. So what we're encouraging is encouraging women religious who have been abused sexually, psychospiritually, even in terms of abuse, harassment, bullying. There are lots of different types of ways in which a woman can be abused. And we're encouraging people to report that. However, that also takes education, because as sisters, and within certain cultures too, one can often feel in an inferior position in a particular context. And sisters have felt voiceless on many occasions, even when they did represent situations. Now, I'm not just talking about sexual abuse, but for example, payment of stipends, dismissing somebody from a position in a diocese. I mean, there's a long list of different kinds of incidents that come under this heading. And I think what we want to do is create a climate of honesty, of mutual respect, of being able to name difficulties that exist and have proper mechanisms for solving difficulties. I think one of the weaknesses within church structures is that where to go in to find recourse when there are difficulties and problems. It's not always easy to know. There is a commission in a diocese called the Mixed Commission, which is a commission of religious men and women and bishops, and the bishop. And there's also that at the continental level, I think. These are places, certainly those mixed commissions are places where areas that are areas that are problematic could be faced together. I think we need to look at the structures and systems within the church so that there is due recourse and that complaints can be made and attended to.
Zuzanna Flisowska, Voices of Faith. I wanted to ask, you said, many of you said that it is important to have women voices in these congregations of Vatican, and I wanted to ask if you said also that there is a process and development, that you were at the beginning were 3, now you were 10. I wanted to ask if you see a chance that it will be developing, and about synods, if you see the chance that with the next synods you can be voting on a synod, and what can we do to support you in getting there in bigger number? Thank you.
Well, we do hope. We see that there is a development in the right way, so we do hope that one day we will get there, that we can be equal members with the men religious also, so we would have voting rights. We don't know when this will happen, but we really think that it will happen. We know that the men religious are kind of trying to support us in this way.
I want to add that after the meeting, one of the cardinals with tears in his eyes said to me, I have been waiting for this, that women will be well represented. Well represented in the sense that all the executive members of UISG were present. But we are hoping that even people like Buko and other women's group might also be added, so that the church's voice, including women, will be there. Would it happen? I hope our brothers have listened, they've seen the difference, and they will make the changes. Thank you.
I would just like to add, I believe, I have hope also, but I don't see this the next synod immediately. But one comment from one bishop in our group, he was telling me, oh, I thought you have voting right. I didn't know that you have no voting rights in synods. So I think we still have a long way to go.
We do have time for one more question, Elise.
Thank you. I'm Elise Harris, also with Crux. I wanted to ask you guys, speaking a lot of the increased presence of women, in particular in this last week's discussion, what you think the specific contribution of women is and what their voice adds to the discussion. Pope Francis had mentioned, you know, he's going to be talking about the importance of women and their contribution after the speech of Linda Giussani. And he had talked about how adding them there is not an act of like feminism with a skirt, you know, so I wanted to ask maybe if you, in some ways, did you find the Pope's words maybe patronizing in some way? Did you agree with them? And what do you think, from your perspectives, the voice of women brings?
I was asked that question in private. And I want to say first that I refuse to have individual interviews because I've said what I wanted to say in the form. You have it, you heard me, you've read it, and the focus should not be on me. I like to see myself being displayed on the social network, but rather the focus should be on the victims. And for me, the pain of watching some of the victims speak is too much for me to speak on their behalf. I also feel that for us as women, we have a different way of approaching things. and that we came together as a group to talk like this is because we want you to hear our voices, and we want you to journey with us. Will there be a change? I pray there will be. What the Pope is saying, remember, he's a man, he's a Mexican, Argentinian, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Mexican. He's an Argentinian Italian. He has gone through all the levels in the church. You have to also acknowledge that he's taking steps. Maybe the words he uses are different from what some of us would like to hear. But let's hope that with him, changes are taking place. And I want to acknowledge the changes, and I say bravo. Remember, I called him Brother Francis. Brother Francis, bravo. But we are hoping that more will continue to happen. Amen.
I also think that women bring in more concreteness because we are nearer to life somehow, to daily life. We don't only speak from our knowledge, which we have accumulated because of studies, but we also speak from experience. I think this is a big help when it was in the group level, for example.
And adding to that, I think we bring our own direct experience as women. You know, sometimes as sisters we're seen, I'm not sure what we're seen as a kind of another kind of species. But we're women who have suffered like other women. So we bring that voice too, and I think that's important. We have had our own journeys within the church, and our own journeys in life, and also the relationships, our relationality. And for many of us in our pastoral ministry, we've heard the pain of so many others. That's what we bring to the table.
Just to continue on what was saying, this relational capacity, I think even in our group, I noticed, I think we can bring in some experiences, more experience of teamwork, of working together. They were speaking very much of solidarity, we have to move in that direction. And I think in that way we can contribute to that.
Probably for me, I felt I could contribute to the groups because I come from India. There is this culture of silence. So I could, talk from that perspective. I think that kind of helped them to listen to a woman's perspective, to feel living in a patriarchal society, what it's like. So I came from my experience, from what I lived. So I think it profited me.
También para mí es un camino a seguir recorriendo para que la voz de la mujer religiosa se escuche cada vez más. Creo que vamos avanzando, pero hay mucho que hacer en diferentes contextos. Y creo que seguimos comprometidas como UISG, es hacer notar la voz, que nos escuchen más, como vida religiosa femenina.
We had a question about the outcome of the meeting. Maybe we could say also the outcome of the meeting for us. And I think, I know that as UISG, this is not going to stop here. We will encourage congregations who don't have a protocol and a code of conduct to write down. And also we will help them to do that. through webinars or through meetings that we will have. There is a two-day workshop, is it, on the care, the new approaches to care of children in institutions. So that we think about that. So we have that already programmed. And I'm sure that during the next year or so, we will have other programs which go with that.
And we'll also, we have our large assembly in May, when almost 800 Superiors General of Women will gather. And we will obviously report on this meeting and discuss the steps forward with them. We have very good relationships with the Centre for Child Protection at the Gregorian University, and we're working with the Vatican Commission on the Protection of Minors and Vulnerable Adults. So we will do everything in our power to work with everybody. Our slogan here at UISG is never do alone what we can do together. And we want to apply that to this situation and also to working with all men and women of goodwill. You know, this is, yes, something within the church, but it also, we need expert help and guidance from wherever and whomever. And we will seek it and we will pass it on to our members.
And on that note, I would like to thank all of you on behalf of the UISG for having participated this morning in this press conference, but most importantly for being a partner with us in getting their voice out to the public that you represent. Thank you very much.